Dice, yeah, ay, ay.
Most conversation about porn addiction are either full of shame or full of jokes. Rarely do we get the honest middle, the real human experience, where someone says, hey, this is what actually happened behind closed doors, and here's how men can break free. Today's guest, GT10, lives in that middle, direct, grounded, no BS, but also warm, funny, and surprisingly easy to talk to. GT didn't grow up thinking porn was a problem. Like most guys, he discovered it young, way before he knew what masculinity even meant. Growing up in Malaysia where sex was taboo and intimacy wasn't talked about, porn became the secret coping mechanism, the safe haven. He didn't even realize he was building. But here's where it gets interesting. Instead of falling deeper into shame or secrecy, GT eventually rebuilt his entire life around honesty, emotional awareness, and redefining what healthy masculinity actually looks like. Today, he's a mental and sexual wellness coach helping men from every background, truck drivers to corporate high performers, religious leaders, NBA and NFL players, break the hidden pattern that keeps them stuck. In this episode, we talk culture, intimacy, dopamine, oxytocin, the cuddle hormone, the myth of discipline, how porn affects relationships, and why rebooting your life isn't about quitting porn. It's about redesigning the man you want to become. If you're curious, open minded, or just tired of the same old surface level conversation about men's struggles, this one goes deeper, but in a way that is relatable and honestly pretty refreshing. This is the FYI Iron Damage Podcast, where the healed, healing, and others share their wisdom. Meet Logan, the strong minded little elephant who learns that bravery isn't about being fearless, it's about believing in yourself even when you're scared. In this beautifully illustrated story, friends follow Logan through a colorful jungle as he learns to calm his worries, take deep breaths, and remind himself, I am strong, I am safe, I can do this. It's a story that helps kids, and maybe a few grown-ups too, find courage, mindfulness, and strength in their hearts. Logan, the strong-minded little elephant, by me, Oscar Luna. Available now at all major retailers and my publisher's bookstore, Milton and Hugo. Because it's up to every parent to show that their child deserves to know that strength starts from within. ET, when men first meet you online, they see a no BS mental and sexual wellness coach. How did your own story lead you to become that guy, the one men turn to for the conversations they're usually reluctant to have?
I like that question. I think first of all, you have to be able to actually face your truth and share your truth first, before you're able to allow people to trust you, to actually have that conversations with you, right? And for me, actually, I honestly did not start it myself. I started with actually, honestly, my mentor, who is the founder and head coach, of the Porn Reboot system, right? And it is because of my interaction with him and his mentorship, that he actually invited me into rebooting, into actually taking this more seriously rather than just like, not really thinking about this as a problem, right? So, there was a time that I didn't think that pornography was a problem for me. It was just a habit that all guys do, right? I think a lot of guys think that way, right? Or are still thinking that way, especially when you're growing up, when you're still young, when you're like, you know, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, all the way to even your 20s, right? A lot of guys who are listening to this, you might be able to relate to where like, oh man, I found like this hidden trove, right? Treasure trove, Typically guys, in our generation probably found it on like magazines, right? Or even
Hidden stash, yeah.
VHS tape, right? That's how I found it, in my cousin's apartment, and no one was watching because no one knew, right? I was only 11, right? And all the way to today. Today, the kids nowadays are exposed at the on average at the age of 6 years old, right? So, but I think it's important just to be aware of how it actually affects one's mind and your mind, and as long as you are honest with yourself, you'll find that there is an alternative, towards, staying this way if this is not like a behavior that you're really happy about.
Yeah. And with the prevalence of smartphones and all these mobile devices, it's so ease of access. And it's almost like now it's kind of like a habit, like brushing your teeth. Like, oh, let me check something out. Let me
Mhm.
handle myself. And it becomes so normalized that it's like when they get older, then you start seeing the problems progress. You start seeing the
Yeah.
interactions with women or whatever they're attracted to be different. And like, okay, like this needs to kind of be pulled back a bit. But getting ahead of myself.
It's all good.
Before coaching and elevated recovery, who were you in your own head? What did masculinity, success, and sex look like for you growing up and in your early adulthood?
Oh, for me, I was very inexperienced. I was really tied to more of a, you know Eastern culture. You know, very timid. I was not timid like socially, but I was timid with like someone what I'm attracted to, right? Woman that I'm attracted to, right? And then that's why I think it was I didn't even know what masculinity really is. I wasn't even trying to define it, right? I think the only I did grow up with in a household with my dad and of course with my mom. The good thing that I appreciated, and also grow up with, that they are still together until today. Like they've never broken up or anything like that, right? Or separated. So it's a relatively healthy household, so to speak, right? But because of like the culture, I'm originally from Malaysia, the Asian culture I grew up with, sex wasn't like a topic they should talk about, right? It's a huge taboo. And you also like not expected to actually have sex early on, right? It's actually really common in cultures like Malaysia or in a lot of like Asian cultures that you remain a virgin actually all the way in your 20s and 30s or even 40s. Oh yeah, it's a lot for men as well, right? It's a lot more common just because of the culture, right? And I was holding on to that culture, honestly, at least that belief that I have to follow that. And hence only until later when I came to the United States, right, I found like some balance and definition of like, you know what? Maybe like, yeah, I'm not someone who's interested in like just, hooking up one night stands all the time, but some, mutually reciprocating, intimacy. I think it's something that I learned to like, man, you know what, I can enjoy this while being upfront and open and honest, about my intentions with the partner that I'm with, and I can actually allow myself like sensationally and also biochemically to calm down, really,
Yeah.
So, but I think a lot of when I didn't have that much experience, I was definitely sexually frustrated, to be honest, and that also turned me into pornography. Pornography was my safe haven, was my coping strategy.
And thank you for giving us a glimpse into how, you handle this at a young age because a lot of young men, they don't have someone to turn to.
Yeah.
And even then I had difficulties talking with, I have three boys. So I have a little bit of difficulty approaching them because I didn't have that same approach and I learned on basically on the fly. I thought it was weird for me that it was just an internal story for myself that I lost my virginity at 18. But then I have friends who lost it earlier.
Yeah.
So I'm like, okay, what is it so different with me? Am I an outlier or blah, blah, blah?
Yeah, yeah. I lost it when I was 26. So I started pretty late on a later, I mean, I've had like some kind of like intimacy, without the actual sexual, intercourse act, right? Prior to that, but it took me years to even build that, confidence.
I'll be interested to know because since I lost mine at 18, you said you lost yours at 26. What is your view on, because I think that we process things differently at different ages, because the way I process things now at 47 is not the way I processed it in my 20s or
Yeah,
30s.
yeah.
So, how was it like, and you weren't a teenager, you were a young adult. So, to lose your virginity at 26, how was your processing mechanism to say, like, wow, this just happened? I've come from this culture, and what was that? Yeah, what was the processing mechanism like after everything was all said and done? And you're like, wow, okay, you know,
It wasn't
check
what I thought.
checklist. Yeah,
First of all, like especially the first experience is always the worst. Not necessarily the worst, but like it wasn't as glamorous
it's the
as
worst.
like
Yeah.
yeah, as like
When you meet newer
exciting.
individuals and you know you're exploring and
Yeah,
they're in
yeah.
that
I think
same
it's
mode, like,
exploring
oh
and
wow, that
things
was
like that,
bad.
and okay, this is what it's about. Oh, okay, yeah. Like it's not like what it actually really, what your fantasy, is a prop up to be, right? Like it's not a big deal, right? But I think one can only actually say that and they truly experience that once you've experienced it. It's hard for any guys to like if you're like still a virgin, like yeah, like no one can actually say it's not a big deal. Like for you, right? We get it. We've all been
Yeah,
there, and I think it's important to experience that and not judge yourself because for years and years and years, I was judging myself for even having that desire, right? And then that's what I came from, right? To it took me. I mean, my first actual some kind of like sexual intimacy with any woman. It wasn't even sexual. It was more like just physical intimacy, right? It was in do social dancing, honestly, right? And then going to social dancing class, swing, and blues, right? And eventually now that I do bachata, salsa, and so on, right? I think that helped me to feel a little bit normal and comfortable, with just basic, friendship, and how to act normal, among like attractive women. And I think that's really important. Like even that, if let's say someone like we also have clients who come to us, they actually don't want to actually have sex, before marriage, right? That's okay. Like that's your rule, that's your faith, right? And but still, it's still important for you to actually engage in some healthy and respectful physical intimacy with women.
yeah. I feel there's nothing more, and in my experience, they like the cuddle time, the
Oh yeah,
connection.
yeah,
And that's like, it's amazing how they value that. They value that a lot more than the actual act. And it brought me to a different place to understand that, okay, you're not just giving yourself physically, but there's so much more. And that connection is more value than an actual orgasm.
yeah,
Like, of course, that's the goal, but it's that connection with somebody who you care for. And a lot of people, really hard for them to make that connection, or at least make sure that it's one after the other. Get that connection, and if you know you really love somebody, give them that time, that space, have them be seen and heard, and the physical touch, and it's way more valuable than the actual act. So, that's how I feel. Yeah, it was a growth thing for me to not just go get it done and oof, get that
yeah,
release,
yeah. Do you know
and
why?
then
Like biochemically?
sure, tell me.
Yeah, well, it's the anticipation of something exciting is the dopamine, right? So that could actually come on any sorts of like way, including just like a regular social media post that's not sexual at all, that gets your attention. That also causes your brain to release a certain level of dopamine as well, right? That you're feeling a certain like pleasure, right? Pleasurable sensation. But the cuddling is actually the oxytocin. That's why, from like some of our clients, we actually have a optimum peak performance optimizer, health kit that we actually ship out, and then we actually can look at the blood. We test the blood, we look at the under the
Nice.
hood of what's really going on, and we know if they've actually been acting out, as in at least with like masturbation without real intimacy. We can kind of tell, right?
That's what they call the love hormone. I believe.
Yeah. It's the love hormone, it's the cuddling hormone, right? Which is oxytocin. It's like what actually makes you feel like cared, right? It's not just the pleasure. It's not. I think a lot of people they misunderstand with the dopamine and oxytocin, right? It's a combination of both. And also serotonin, which usually comes right after you've actually ejaculated, right? And of course, tryptophan is what cause you to feel sleepy and so on. you know so yeah,
Okay.
but anyway, I think it is the release of that. I think a lot of times, guys who are actually addicted to porn, usually just start as like because they're either running away from something, from like maybe a problem that they're dealing with in life. They're using pornography as an escape, right? And usually, it also couples with like a little bit of a boredom, lack of intimacy, right? And also, and just the lack of like meaningful life. It goes back to that.
Okay. Yeah, you definitely add on to that with going forwards.
Sure.
Some men still downplay porn as just a private enjoyment. From your perspective, what are the most misunderstood ways porn addiction shows up in a man's life, emotionally, actually, and relationally, that you can add on to what you've already discussed?
Yeah. So I think like the first thing is to also like ask yourself, how does it make you feel, right? I think most guys in some ways, they would feel like a little bit of a guilt, you know, after the fact of it, right? Not so much of like the act of pornography or even masturbation, but because if let's say you have all of your different life goals and lifestyle, right, fulfill, you engaging in porn in itself, it's not necessarily good or bad, actually. It's just what it is, And then I think a lot of guys they misunderstood, like, oh, they come to like, us that like we help men quit porn addiction, right? You see, the key word is the addiction part of it. We're actually helping men quit. It's not that you have to give up porn forever for the rest of your life, right? And if it's something that within your reboot process that you feel like it actually leads to something worse once you like started doing it, it's like a slippery slope for a man based on that definition of their reboot. Well, they may have to make a decision of like set stronger boundaries than most men to never watch porn again. That's also a possibility, right? But has to base on their own definition of how it makes them feel and how it affects them, what it triggers them to do eventually, right? So and I think a lot of men who actually normalizes it, in a way, I think that's also the danger of it. It's because it's so normalized, but at the same time, ironically, it's also a taboo to talk about it as a problem. Like
Yeah, it's
compared to
like
drugs and alcohol or
it's in
any
the
kind of
air. Yeah,
addiction,
yeah.
right?
Like, okay, I see it there, but I can't talk about it because people are gonna think I'm weird or whatever. But
Yeah, or they're gonna
no, that
actually get to a point of like they would think like someone who is addicted to porn, they equate that person into a pedophile,
yeah,
like all the way to the extreme, right? When that's not the case, right?
right.
And then a lot of guys, who are watching porn, they're just regular guys, who are, regardless of the job, it could be blue collar or even white collar or whatever the case is, right? We're all normal human beings, living our lives, and then you still stay addicted to porn. Some of them, they are leaders, sisters, reach out to us, to quit porn as well. Because I think one of the biggest thing, it's also because how discreet we are, right? A lot of people, they reach out to us, anonymously, with an alias, right? And then or a pseudonym, and we work with them. So
And that's why I wish, and I hope through interviews like this that individuals like those, like if you do come out and say, okay, I've had this issue before, I am working on it and getting better at it, there are so many people that can see that and be like, yeah, that's me too. That's me too. And
yeah,
that's one of the reasons why I love doing that and say, when you're, what's the term, preaching to the choir. And if that's the right term, where it's you're making a vulnerable part of yourself public to tell people, say, hey, look, I know you're going through this. So am I. and I'm speaking up so that maybe we can all speak up and move this a little bit further, faster.
Well, it's the whole concept of like if it's something that you are like struggling, right? Anyone who is struggling, right? There's a certain level of shame, guilt, and embarrassment that you feel, right? It doesn't matter what the struggle could be. The struggle could be even like financial struggle. It could be like you have a relationship problem, or it could be like you just have like something that, procrastination even, right? It's something as simple as that, right? I think, but with pornography, I think that's shame and a guilt, and it goes up to the different level, and also the addiction part. And when someone is hiding, right, or dealing with it alone, and the only person that you have to talk to is yourself in your mind, it's so easy to feel that I'm the only, like, no one can really relate to me. I'm the only person who is actually struggling with this. I think that's the deep emotion a lot of guys they cannot get out of, and that's why it's so important for you to hear like my story, or even a lot of our clients' story. We have like literally like almost over 100 success stories, hundreds of them actually. They're like, oh wow, okay, I'm not alone. Like feeling that you're not alone, I think that's the first step. It's like, okay, you know what, this is not a unique problem that has no solutions to solve, right? There is a
Exactly.
way out of it. There is a light at the end of that tunnel, right? So to speak. As cliche as it sounds, right? It works for our mind, right? And it really is important for you to feel hope that there's a way out of this.
And it's funny you say that, because I'm getting to realize that when I speak to people or have a conversation, they go, "Oh, you have a podcast," and we're talking, and I'm telling them my story. I'm telling them about my traumas, and they're like looking at me, and then they're, I see the some change, or at least some recognition, and they're like, "Why are you saying all of this?" And I'm like, "Well, because this is me. This is my life. If we're talking, why? I'm not telling you my most intimate moments. I'm just telling you what I've been through." And intimate moments as like, super personal, but all the things that I've been through, my journey that led me here and put me in front of you.
Mm-hmm.
Why am I going to talk about superficial things? Why am I going to talk about the weather? Why this or that? And letting you know that, okay, I'm trying to find connection with you. And
Absolutely.
if what I bring up helps you get curious about, hey, you've been through this, and what did you do, and this and that, and I find another friend, I find another connection. I
Absolutely.
get I get my little blast of that connection hormone with someone to say, hey, look, whatever you may be going through, there are ways, and you just met somebody that might help you continue on your journey and get you curious about, healing yourself.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for doing what you do and hosting these podcast, episodes, man. I think that's why anyone who's listening right now and tuning in, right? If you've been listening up to like this 25 minutes now, 20 plus minutes, however, like the edits, right? It's cut, but essentially, it's so important for you to just be honest with yourself and how you really feel about whatever behaviors that you're doing, right? And get help, right?
And thank you for doing what you do regarding helping men get past any sort of addiction and judgment, and being their true selves, and knowing that, look, you can be the best self you can be, and let's help you get through it.
Absolutely.
Now, as you mentioned before, you work with like some really high functioning men, guys who are performers at work, but they might be crumbling in private.
Hmm.
What are some of the patterns you see around the stress, the shame, and performance that keep them stuck?
That's a good question. I think what keeps a lot of high performing men, or men with like for high status, or men with essentially like a lot of things to lose, is the fear of losing them, right? It could be the fear of losing a relationship. I think that's the biggest one, right? They don't want the wife to find out about this behavior. And then some of them, the fear of losing respect, right? Which is, that's a huge one in terms of like, especially who are leaders, religious leaders, spiritual leaders, or even just leaders of community. And we even have like online coaches of other, kind reach out to us. We have fitness coach reach out to us with personal trainers, bodybuilders, NFL players, reach out to us, right? NBA players, right? It doesn't matter where you are in your journey, right? We have just everyday, regular dudes, truck drivers, right? Doctors, engineers, IT, right? IT professionals. Actually, that's a pretty big one because a lot of them they're struggling, and they know how to override every single blockers out there.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what blockers, you find a way.
Yeah. Have you heard in it was a long time ago, but Geek Squad.
Yeah.
They were in the news because a particular one, or I don't know if there were multiple, they would have what was called a honeypot. And I'm like, what the hell is this? So I'm reading the article, and what they would do is every time they would repair somebody's computer and they would find the explicit content of a customer, they would put it in that pot. And they called it a honeypot. So like it was multiple IT repair guys doing this and taking people's personal data, putting in there for their own personal use until somebody found out. I think somebody put a recording program and it interests me because I'm in IT, and they put a recording program on their laptop and it recorded them moving all the files, finding the files like they just baited them.
Wow.
And yeah, this was like a long time ago, so I could only imagine what people are
Yeah,
doing
and there's a
now.
lot of scams, that's going on, sextortion, extortions, and things
Yes.
like that, that people actually could get to, and then people could lose their lives over that.
Man, I've gotten so many spam emails saying that, oh, I got you. I put a recording program on your
Oh,
phone,
yeah.
and I seen you doing these wild things. And if you don't pay me in Bitcoin, I'm like, what the hell is this?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. There's so many like templates out there that actually people are sending. I think the first thing is just like is to block that person, right? What regardless of whoever that is, even if they actually have actual recordings of you doing stuff, just block them. I think that's the first thing because they're hustlers. They'll move on, right? Like if they have no way to contact you, it means that there's 0% chance of them getting any money out of you, which means that it is not worth at that time to keep following up with you, right? They may spam you like automatically, on the same message, but don't worry, like the worst thing that you can do is to pay them.
Yeah, because it's never gonna stop.
It's
Yeah.
never gonna stop because once you pay them, they're like, oh, okay, this is the golden goose.
Guess what you did on Tuesday? Now it's time to, pay the piper.
Exactly. And then they're gonna get deeper and deeper into your system. So,
Nope.
yeah.
Did not receive. Now, moving on. The porn reboot system is very intentional about the word reboot instead of quit.
Yeah.
In your words, what does a true reboot look like beyond simply not watching porn?
Yeah, the true reboot looks like where you are actually changing your habits on a daily basis of how you wake up, how you go to bed, how you work, how you run in your life. Are you actually doing the things that you say that you're gonna do? Are you doing the things that you want to do to improve different areas of your life? I think that's so important, and it has to become a lifestyle. Because if you're just like not watch porn, like I think all recovery programs that claim to actually help men quit porn, they don't really work. They work temporarily. They work as long as the clients are in the program and paying them, right? It's not about that. For us, we actually are a huge proponent of like you join the program, you finish it, you reboot, and you leave. We want you to graduate. We want you to
Right.
graduate from this phase of your life where you become a man who doesn't need porn ever again, right? Of course, there are certain areas of your life that you may need to address because your addiction or your yearning for that sensation of pornography, right? Because you're not addicted to porn because of porn. You're addicted to porn because how it makes you feel, you know? Usually physically and biochemically, right? That's literally all this was about, right? And also the emotion, right? That you like, it's like an emotional blanket, especially when you feel alone, or you feel lack of intimacy. Maybe like you're in a doghouse with your wife, you haven't really had much sex, right? Any married men who have less than 10 times of sex per year, that's a sexless marriage. It means that there's a deeper issue inside your marriage and intimacy and communication that you're not addressing. So all these deeper issues, you need to address them. you know. And but sometimes it's so hard to address them because it's
It
hard.
is.
It hits your ego so hard. That's why you protect yourself from like, nah, I don't have a problem.
It's like, oh, I'm a man. I'm a man.
Like someone
Men
who was
don't
like
do
asking,
this.
"You
Yeah.
watch porn?" Sometimes, like you just downplay
I
it.
know about it. Yeah, like I know about
I'm in
it.
control, you know. It's fine. Like
I
you
heard
want to
about
talk about it,
OnlyFans. Yeah.
you know. Oh, it's not porn. It's not porn. You know, like even though like it really is, you know, especially when he talks about like all of the posts, you know, that we see, you know, on online. Man, come on. Anything that is like really sexually arousing for you to start actually like masturbating and pleasure yourself, that is porn.
Yeah.
You know.
Now, for those individuals that, and I'll be interested to know your take on it, because a lot of my issues was rooted in sexual trauma early in my life. Now, what are your thoughts on that when individuals who do certain things sexually or not at all or overcompensate because of their trauma, you also recommend that they make sure they do therapy, or what would you recommend for somebody whose sexual issues are rooted in trauma?
Absolutely. If the underlying issues is from trauma, is traumatic based, I think it's important to address that, you know, as long as that's not the only thing that you do. I think a lot of the more like a lot of therapists and counselors, they think that they can actually help men quit porn is because they it's helpful to deal with the trauma piece, but a lot of them they get lost in the trauma piece. Does that make sense? You know, they don't really like, or even like give the men's, you know, way to like really get out of this and build a lifestyle that matches the ideal self image they want to become, right? So that's the last piece of the porn reboot system, which is like, you know, you changing your self image and becoming the man who really like you're just not gonna do that. You're not gonna go into giving into that lower vibration of yourself, right? I think that's really important. And that's where like rewiring of your brain comes in. It's not like anything's esoteric. I think a lot of people they talk about rewire. They don't really understand what that means. You know, it's a slow process because it also took pornography years to rewire your brain. You know, and while it's very powerful, it's a very powerful rewiring process just because pornography, especially nowadays, they spend millions of dollars on psychologists, anthropologists studies to design the whole entire industry to be as addictive as they could be. And it's all optimized, you know, including the lighting, including the production value, all of that stuff is all designed to make you come back. You know, that's why we have this free view free view pornography era, right? That we've had, right? You know, there was a time that pornography used to be paid only, right? When it first started. Then, if you look at the history of it, suddenly they just like, you know what? We're just gonna give everything out for free. How do they start making money? They make money with what? With ads. And that's why back then pornography used to be the product. Now you know who was the product? The reason I was gonna say who because it's the viewers.
People.
It's the
Yeah.
number of views. And that's
Yeah.
what these companies they sell. They sell the views, right? And
Wow.
another thing is also the replacement of like prostitution, actual in-person prostitution into digital prostitution, which is
Mm.
OnlyFans. That's literally what it is, right? You know, I think a lot of, and then there's nothing like, for me, I'm also not like shaming anyone or any woman, you know, or individuals who wants to get into sex work. If they're really truly happy with that, that's their life. I'm not here to judge them, right? You know, I have personal friends who actually in that work, you know,
Okay.
and it's okay. Like if that's what you really want to do, right? You know, but it goes back to what? Like, is that what you really want? You
Yeah.
know,
Does that make
ideally?
you happy? Yeah. No. Exactly.
Are
And
you
the way
actually
they.
fulfilling
Yeah.
internally? You know, or if there's a part of you who's feeling a little bit like incongruence, it goes back to the congruency as an individual, right? Whether it's from the view of like someone who is viewing pornography or a customer of subscriber of OnlyFans sites, right? You know, I mean, you know, like how much OnlyFans actually like generated, right, last year itself.
No, but I'm guessing what I see people bragging about what they make, I'm sure it's in the hundreds of millions, if not like a billion and over. But
Six
what is
point
it?
six billion within a year.
Oh,
I
that's
know.
insane.
Yeah, which is actually, by the way, almost 12 times more than regular pornography sites combined.
Mm.
You know, so the Mind, I think it's Mind Geek, or I forgot the name, the actual name, right, of the company, the corporation that owns all
Mhm.
these porn sites. They generate about 500 million per year. OnlyFans is one company, and that's just one company that hosts these sites, right? You know, that like pay-per-view kind of thing, you know, and subscribing, right? It's 6.6 billion. There's also other smaller companies also doing the same thing as well, live cam and things like that, right? You know, so and now we have AI porn. You know, now you don't even have to be a girl to run a run an OnlyFans agency.
It always,
Big.
yeah, I know, it just morphs in so many different ways because somebody just takes this technology and says, "Oh, I got an idea," and then it just takes off. And it's funny you mention about seeing if people are happy doing what they're doing, even if it's towards this model of making money through OnlyFans, pornography, or whatever. It doing this actually, because like how you're doing your passion, I'm doing mine, and I don't know if you have these days where you're done what you're doing, you're helping someone and you go, wow, I get to do this,
Yeah,
instead of like I have to do this. So
exactly.
that put me in a mindset of like speaking to someone and knowing I have my passion. I have something that was in a weird way given to me all in one shot,
Yeah.
to be like, okay, you're gonna do this. This is the name of it. I mean, I talk about it a lot. I like bringing it up because I like people to identify their own passions.
Yeah.
Because what happened was is, and I don't know if you heard me say this in another podcast, where I was making a delivery for I was doing an independent contractor thing. It was at the same building, the same floor, but not the same apartment where my trauma happened.
Mm,
So I was letting this affect me for decades. But at that point in time, so that was the last delivery. So I text my wife. I'm like, look, this is what's going on. This is where I'm at. I'm at this. I'm at, my old family residence in the Bronx that I used to visit.
yeah.
And, I said, look, I just need a little bit of time. I
Yeah.
just want to take a breather. I'm not freaking out.
Yeah.
I'm not, in a sort of state where you need to be concerned. So I forgot where I went, and then it just came to me. I swear to God, it's like, it was like a flash. It was like, boom, just right in my head, the name of the podcast, what I want to do, like doing a podcast. I used to listen to a lot of them, and it's like, giving other people's experiences and all that. So I say that to say that when I speak with individuals
Yeah.
and I ask them, I'm like, okay, in my head, I'm saying, you're looking at somebody who loves what they do. That I can't wait to do this. I can't wait to do another
Yeah.
interview.
Yeah.
I push past all of my negativity
Yeah. Oh
and
yeah.
all that stuff to get to this point
Yeah.
and produce and create content.
Oh yeah.
And I talk to them and say, well, do you love what you do?
Yeah.
Is this just something that you see? Or then you kind of get that response and they're like, well, nah, I wish I could do something else or whatever. And so, like, and that gets them analyzing themselves about, okay, I want to do what he does. I want to do something that I love to do.
Yeah.
And if they're in this industry, it's like you can do it. Or if you're addicted to porn and say, hey, look, you want to change your mindset, visit, the porn reboot system and just find out where your passions lie to get yourself out of something that's keeping you stuck and
Absolutely.
or at least slow down.
Yeah. Yeah, that's why we actually like the word, like the, not just the word, the whole entire philosophy behind it, which is rebooting, because I think most guys are addicted to porn, or start to become addictive, right? That behavior in a very young age, which means that you don't have an original state to recover towards. That's why recovery doesn't work. Abstinence doesn't work. That's just a temporary fix, right? You need to solve the underlying issues. It could be in your career, it could be finances, lifestyle choice, diet, which is leading to health, your sleep cycle, right? It could be the way that you talk to yourself. It could be some trauma based, problems, root causes that you need to actually release. Or it could be even like mindset issues, that you have that you're holding on to, with your life, right? And or it could be a relationship that is dysfunctional that you're in right now, that you're not, or lack of relationships, right? Lack of human connection. When I say relationships, I don't just, limit to like romantic, or sexual, but also just friendships and family and so on. Certain things, that certain conversations that you should have, but you haven't had yet. So there's a lot of little things. I think most of us is so easy to get caught up with like your life, with working to pay the bills, right? With the immediate problem to solve, right? That seemingly is urgent, but you haven't really trained your mind to like, what do I really have to do to actually transform? And a lot of times, all you need is the right conversation with the right people. And the right conversation with right people is what we provide. It took us 13 to 14 years, actually, specifically, the head coach and founder, JK, to pretty much start this movement and this creation of this very unique, community that we have because of privacy, because of like everyone is there to be 100% themselves, and then we're able to connect, right, in a very deep level. And of course, everyone, because we have like other experts on our coaching panel, that like we have a neuroscientist, we have a trauma, reboot coach as well, who is also has her own like practice, who is a clinician, she's a psychotherapist and all that in her own right, and then we have already done the vetting process for you. You don't even have to look like try to like go like therapy after therapy for those of you who've actually done therapy, and like how hard it is to find a really good therapist.
Yes.
Or you know how costly it could be, like you do like a whole year of therapists, they may not even like be the right therapist for you for your problems, or they solve a portion of the problem for you, but they don't really like address the other. Or some of them they will literally just tell you, hey, it's okay to watch porn, just don't do it as much. That's all they say to you.
Yeah. What do you mean? Like I have a
I
problem?
have a problem, bro. Like, seriously. And they can't relate to you because all they actually try to advise you, it's from the textbook. That's why, like, it took us, each of our experts coach, it took us at least on average about 4 to 5 years to find one and vet one and actually, like, train one to the way that it is. That's why we have really good partnership with them. And anyone who are in our program, they get access, direct access to them. Literally 5 group coaching sessions weekly, every single week. You know? Yeah.
Yeah.
So
No, and that's awesome to have that stack because I take that approach with individuals who they're finally curious. They want to do something. I said, okay, it's a multifaceted
it
approach, and
is.
that's
It
great that
has to be.
that you yeah,
It has to be
because I
holistic.
I got I got when my relationship was almost done, and I did a retreat with the wonderful guys at and I've bigged them up before, Forgive to Live. You know, that's where I released my biggest trauma, the sexual abuse trauma.
Good.
And then I realized that okay, I equate it to, and I keep saying this so much, but you know what? It's my way of connecting. I released that large anchor.
Sure.
But what people don't realize is that once you release that large trauma, you see the little anchors that are connected to you. And they
Absolutely.
don't realize that. They're like, wait, this didn't help. I'm still angry. I say, yeah, but, and that's what I was telling myself. But I said, I still get upset. I still, I have my anger issues. I have this issue, that issue. And then I hit me. I said, oh, shit. I said that one trauma was hiding everything else because I wasn't focusing on that.
Yep. Because your mind, your focus is so coarse. It's just like how um your view is blurred. You actually almost like have like a little bit of a tunnel vision. You're not like seeing what's right there next to you.
Yep.
And then I think it's the same thing as all of our attentions. Especially nowadays, a lot of people are using the word ADHD a little bit too much. right? Even though they don't have ADHD really, but they have symptoms of ADHD because of social media addiction. So
Yeah.
and because our mind is just so filled with stuff that is not consequential information.
24/7. Yeah. That's why That's why I turn off my, and I recommend this to people. Like I put my either my phone on silent
Mm-hmm.
with you can take individuals' contacts in case there's an
Mm-hmm.
emergency, God forbid,
Mm-hmm.
and your phone only rings when those people contact you.
Absolutely right.
Otherwise, I don't want to wake up in the middle of the night, use the bathroom, and then grab my phone, check some stuff, or I wake up when it dings. Like, dude, like turn it off if everything's good, or just set it to that state where if it's an emergency, you could be reached.
Sure.
Otherwise, get a good night's sleep.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, yeah. Or like the first thing that you should look at is not your phone, right? You
Exactly.
know, if you need like if for those who use like a phone as an alarm clock, use an alarm clock, use a clock,
Yeah. Go
and
old
then
school.
and it's not easy. It's not easy, right? Especially with the way that like most humans, right? Like we have a lot more phones nowadays, than clean toilet. Like for example, in countries in Africa, right? In certain developing countries, right? Which is crazy if you think about that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like clean toilet, it's a necessity, right? If not, people have disease and they would die, right? But now
Yeah.
we have more phones, more iPhones, or like smartphones. People actually can do video call, even though they're like struggling to like get to the meal. Like if you look at all the homeless, out there, they have phones, so they have an iPhone,
Fair point. Fair point.
priorities, right? It's just so
Yeah.
flip, right? But like going back to what you were sharing earlier, I really appreciate you being vulnerable here, on this call as well. It makes sense, like once you release that bigger anchor, that coarse anchor, it refine your attention and to the point that you're able to actually look at the other stuff more clearly. It's like you're sharpening your mind, to the point that, oh, okay, I can see these problems a little bit more. And some of these lot of other smaller anchors, they might be really like subtle, so
Yeah.
subtle to the point you don't even see
Yeah.
the problem, or you don't even see that as a problem. You see them as pleasure,
Yeah. You
but
can
it also holds you back from getting what you really want in life.
receive.
And that's why it's important to like really redesign life, and that's why we also have a fitness coach. If for anyone who is actually because of their health habits, it's causing them to use pornography to cope, right? And
Yeah.
then some of them, it could be biochemical, right? They need to pretty much a whole full like hormone optimization protocol, right? And some of them they need like literally a dating coach, and we have a dating reboot program too. So about any
Nice.
single guys, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So like literally, it has to be holistic. It goes back to that.
I received. So when a man comes to you saying, I need more discipline, which is a big thing among men, especially, doesn't matter. Well, what do you see underneath that? What are the deeper wounds or beliefs that usually must be addressed to make an individual on the road to being more disciplined for themselves?
I think the first part is they have to define that reboot, right? Because one of the things that I think a lot of men, and I used to make this mistake as well, is they are not spending enough time to think, like to
Hmm.
actually sit down and think, what do you want?
That
What makes you
reflection,
happy?
yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And after you think, after you design, you may actually define, okay, I want this and this and this and this. I want this to happen with a specific timeline within the year, within 3 years, within 5 years, and so on. And you reverse engineer it. It's really simple. It sounds really simple, but it's hard to do. And a lot of times, once you started doing it, once you hit a certain like mental block, you procrastinate. It's so easy to do that. Why? It's not that they want to procrastinate. It's not that they don't care about living a good life. No,
Yeah.
because they don't have enough data. Because a lot of times you design something, you're like, okay, I want this and this and this, but I haven't really reached that goal. I don't even know how it feels like. So guess what? It's so important for you to, while you're designing, you need to actually have tools. So first of all, to make sure that you're defining your life, your reboot, right? Based on you, not based on someone else's goal.
Yeah.
You know, not based on just the flashy stuff, but based on like how it really makes you feel. And if you haven't really experienced that, let me just give you a more concrete example. Let's say if there's a certain house that you want to buy, that you want to live in, man, it would be nice to have like a house like this. It could be anything. It could be a condo. It could be, a nice, like let's just use the most typical one, white picket fence with a yard, backyard, front yard, everything. You have a dog
Yes.
and you have like your wife, everything like nice family,
Yeah.
kids, and
I
all
can
that.
relate because I except the white picket fence, I have that.
Everything else,
And
right? Maybe not white, maybe
exactly.
red, maybe
Dog,
black.
everything.
I don't
Yeah.
care, right? It depends on your style, right? It could be even gothic, right? It goes back
Yeah.
to what you really want, right? Let's say you want
Hmm.
that, right? But let's say you are someone who just haven't even experienced having that kind of space. Well, rent one. Experience it for yourself. When I say rent one, maybe not like a whole list or whatnot. Maybe just go to Airbnb, find like the ones that you
Exactly.
actually enjoy. It's like, hey, let me just live there for like a week or a weekend or a few days, whatever, right? Short period of time and see how you really feel when you're in that
Let me
space.
experience it. Give yourself experiences.
Exactly. Once you have that experience, you're like, oh, like I'm just using that as an example because it's an easy way to like have a concrete example. Another example is like let's say you have a place that you've been wanting to go, you want to visit, or you imagine, you fantasize yourself of living like overseas. Buy a ticket, get yourself, the passport, travel and put yourself into that situation and actually see how you
Yeah.
feel, how you really
That's
feel
a
being in
must.
that culture, learning the
Yeah.
language. I came from Malaysia myself because I designed that, right? No one believed me. My parents didn't believe me that I could do it because we couldn't afford it financially. That was 15 years ago, right? I came here by myself, 9,000 miles away.
Wow.
That's a whole another story, right? But like, it's all about really like designing, who you want to be, and including the girls that you want to be with, right? If there's a specific kind of aesthetic, or attributes, internal and external, right, that you're more attracted to, well, put yourself into a situation where you meet them, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And talk to them and find out who they are. Don't just like, oh, because of approach anxiety. Well, there is a way that you can beat the approach anxiety. There's a way that you can actually deal with like maybe the trauma that you have, right? That is causing you to like maybe like clamp up, right? Or even like not able to actually express yourself effectively, or even show your interest, without being a creep. How do you do that, right?
True.
So yeah.
Yeah, they get your dating coaching program to get them going. Because I would tell people this, like, I don't know, I can't figure it out. I was like, well, you identified the issue,
You
so
find an
why
expert,
not?
someone who already has the
Exactly.
results, right?
See, you do a you if you're curious, then curiosity leads to search. So search and see what other individuals are doing.
Absolutely.
And again, it goes back to me having these really explicit interviews to let them know, guys, like, come on, there's way more people. I didn't know there was an individual out there like you. But I was getting curious about the platform that we use, and and I'm checking everyone. I'm seeing like, okay, I already did this topic, this topic. I
Yeah.
see yours. I'm like, hell yeah. It's like, no, I gotta talk to this guy, and it goes back to what you were saying about, I guess, with individuals, I guess in a sense of not prioritizing themselves. Because
Yeah.
a lot of times, like I had a friend and he's one of the ones that I did my retreat with and love him to the day I die. We would have what was called like a solo date where you would go out, do something for yourself,
Oh yeah.
maybe do a little bit of reflection, journal, and just enjoy the fact that you're able to do something like that for yourself
Yes.
when sometimes you haven't done. And his approach was the same as mine, where it was like, no, I want to make sure my kids are okay, my wife is okay, my kingdom is okay. I'm like, okay, but what about you?
Yeah.
What about you? Why are you not prioritizing yourself? I was like,
Yeah.
you're deflecting all the BS that you're going through by making sure everyone's okay, and then you're ignoring the one that matters the most is yourself. And
Yeah.
I approached it in such a compassionate way because I love this guy. He's one of, it was three of us, and he was one of them, and I love them both to death.
Okay.
And and we always check each other, like, what's going on?
Sure.
Like, dude, what are
That's
you
good.
doing? And
Yeah.
so I did that, and so some people don't have that support system,
No,
and they
no.
have to do that themselves.
Or that's why that's why we provide high level accountability. We'll call you out
Right.
very
And
directly.
it's great that you guys put ahead to say, hey, look, you guys have to self-analyze. You have to do your reflection. You
Yep.
have to process the things you've never processed before.
Mm-hmm.
It's so crucial for men to do that because then they realize what they don't want to do. Because if they're
Yeah.
passionate about something and they're like, why the fuck did I spend 4 hours scrolling through Instagram, looking at women in bikinis or whatever, or then going to the porn, and I don't get to work on my passion project. I don't get to
Yeah.
discover what it is. And it's like, okay, dude, you have to put that down and do that self-reflection. And sometimes it's not comfortable, but then it's also not comfortable laying down after you've taken care of yourself and you feel that wave of regret of like, shit, I wasted so much
I
time in one
know.
day.
Yep. Yep. Absolutely. Absolutely. It's all about just facing that truth and be honest with yourself.
Yeah, and I love having these conversations because it's basically a mirror to what I was doing or what I am doing. So it's like a lot of this is like, yes, I love to help other people, but
Yeah.
I want to help myself. Like this is
Absolutely. Oh yeah.
like a
And
selfish passion.
it's a
Yeah.
lifestyle. It has to be a lifestyle, right? It
Yeah.
cannot be just like something you do just once, or twice a year. It has to be something that's part of your routine. So yeah, absolutely.
Now, this is something you might deal with a lot with men and excuses. You describe your style as direct and uncompromising, but also grounded in compassion. How do you balance calling men out on excuses with not shaming them back into hiding?
I think like one of the biggest that one is a complete separate skills that you need to develop. And how do we actually get like from one area, where they're like crying? We have sessions, so like guys are crying, because they actually have let down like the armor. I think the first part is like the armor. I think a lot of guys they don't know how to actually take that off while feeling safe. So feeling the safetyness is the most important thing. And a lot of guys, they feel safe with us is because we lead by example. It goes back to that, and then how do we lead by example? We actually are vulnerable first, right? With our own past trauma, with our own past struggles that we've had, right? Even as
And
a
I
strategist. So
and just to quickly touch on that is one thing that I love to do, and I tell people, and they get surprised by it. And please continue after I'm done. Is I always tell them I find my strength, and you can with yours through vulnerability.
yeah. Oh yeah.
It's the quickest way to
Absolutely.
find your strength to be vulnerable
With the right
with
context.
individuals. Exactly,
Yeah, with the
exactly.
right
You have to
context.
do,
Not when you're on a
yeah.
date, okay? Guys, don't do that.
Yeah, paste the stories, paste the stories.
Yeah, no, I
You're
think a lot
absolutely
of
right.
guys they misunderstand. That's the reason I want to make sure I say
Yeah.
that piece.
Yes.
It's like look at the timing there, and that's why you need to be
Read the
connected
room,
with
yeah.
like-minded men,
Yes.
not your female friends, okay? Not the someone that you actually want to get with, right? Not your wife. Sorry, not your wife as well, right? There's time for that when both of you have earned that, right? I'm not saying that you shouldn't. I'm just saying look at the timing.
True, very true.
Look at the occasion, right? Are you on a date or are you like having like an actual intimate, vulnerable like share, right? There is a way that you do that without losing self-respect and without losing respect from your spouse, right? Because another thing that I always tell a lot of guys, that like work with us, we can go back to like what we talked about earlier. It's yeah, never have your wife become your accountability partner. That's the one
Interesting.
thing that would ruin your marriage. Absolutely, 100%. Right? Maybe like you would not get a divorce, just because of your situation or whatnot. But guess what? You're training your wife to become your mom.
Okay, interesting. Yeah.
You know, you're training your wife to become a mom. If your wife is your accounting partner, if like that's the only accounting partner you have, you wanna maybe you started that way because you got caught. That's okay. You're in doghouse. You want to transition yourself out of that frame, you know, and
Okay.
then get someone.
Especially if it's a woman that is trying to understand what you're going through. So that's why you recommend just an outside
Well,
accountability partner.
especially porn addiction. Maybe it's like it's a little bit different dynamics with drugs and alcohol
True.
addiction, honestly, or
Yeah.
any other kind of behavior or any kind of like, of course, you're a life partner. You want to keep each other accountable, basic lifestyle and things like that. But with porn addiction, because of how it affects usually the other partner, betrayal trauma, causing them to feel less than, less sexy, less wanted, and so on. And the fact that like just imagine like how you would feel if let's say your spouse, your wife, were to be addicted to pornography and actually, masturbate, and get pleasure from watching other dudes naked. How will you feel?
Yeah, no, it's a problem for a lot of people, and it's like
You know?
they immediately turn it on themselves and like, wait, the same way women do that for us, like, wait, I'm not enough. It's like,
Yeah,
well, it
yeah.
doesn't
So
it
so
doesn't
that's
drill
how
down to
you
that,
yeah,
but
that's how you actually
yeah,
can flip that around, right? But going back to like initially what we talk about in terms of like really changing the self-image, I think it's really important, for guys to get that support. And the only way you get the support is what? Is you need a group that you can trust. And that's why we get
yes,
referrals all the time. We get a lot of referrals through people listening to the podcast like this, right? They find this. They're like, man, how did I not find this already? Like, like how your reaction is like, oh, wow, I want to talk to this guy. Why? Because it's not enough people talking about it. Still not enough people talking
exactly.
about, And then we want to normalize these conversations. That is okay
Yes. Oh
to
yeah.
admit that you are addicted to porn. And it's not something that you should be ashamed of. And if you feel like weird about talking about it, it's okay. Come to us. We know how to talk about this. We know how to have a conversation like this normally, right? And then I was gonna say, like, we
Yeah.
have sessions, from like literally one end. People are like breaking down and crying and things like that, all the way to like, well, joking about it and laughing within one session. That's how powerful a lot of our conversations are with our coaches.
That's amazing. Then they're ready to release and just like, and heal and like, dude, let's get past this, bro. You're ready. You're here with me in the
Yeah,
room, in this chat, and like, they're ready. And I love that. I love that because, you're in a position where you see somebody's journey beginning and it's a privilege to be there.
absolutely. It is a privilege to have conversations like that. And then for anyone who is listening right now on this episode, you may actually already have these sensations and feel a certain level of release already. That's okay. That's good. Even though you might not be even ready to have a conversation with us yet directly, but at some point, you will reach a point that you may feel like, okay, you know what? Let me actually have an honest conversation. Don't worry, we won't bite, okay? We're gonna have an open conversation, and if you want to use an alias to talk to us, that's fine. We understand that. We work with a lot of guys, who will work with us, and then at some point they'd like, okay, you know what? Here's who I am,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
then but like within the community, they still use an alias. That's okay, you know.
That's great. And to offer, I know a lot of people use that term, but it does apply. They need that confident, safe space. They need that safe
Absolutely.
space. A lot of women don't realize, and other men don't realize is that a lot of men out there do not feel safe,
No.
especially to express.
And they don't dare to say that they don't feel safe. Why? Because of the identity as a man. That's is to protect, is to provide the family, right? Is to protect his own reputation, right? And so on, right? And it goes back to repetition. And it goes back to like the lose of respect of others and themselves. And that's why it's so important for you to find a community that you feel safe about, right? And then one of the easiest thing, for anyone to find out about us, we have a free community on Facebook. It's called Porn Reboot, for high performers, entrepreneurs and business owners, right? We don't just limit to like working with business owners or entrepreneurs. We have a lot of guys, like any one of you who you may not be even a high performer yet, but as long as you have a desire and ambition to be a high performing man in your own definition, as a master of yourself, regardless of your how much money you make or even like the occupation, right? But chances are a lot of guys that actually come to us, they reboot, although we cannot legally like promise, they all actually improve their finances, regardless. Oh
Yeah,
yeah.
that shift in mindset, a lot of things fall, and I've noticed that because once I shifted my mindset and doing a lot of things that I shouldn't be doing, and now I notice a difference. I notice a difference in
Absolutely.
productivity, I notice a difference in my life, and I notice a difference in what a lot of people worry about is how they approach things in their life. And
Absolutely.
that's very vital for someone to be like, okay, it's one thing to react to something, but how do you approach things that you would normally not approach them in such a good way?
Hmm.
In every facet of your life. And now with I guess the relationship part of it, a lot of men secretly worry that if they stop using porn, their sex life will get worse.
Yeah.
What have you seen happen to men's sexual confidence, desire, intimacy when they do work? Like expand on what you've already been saying with that centralized focus of those who are in relationships. Start
I
working
would
on
say
themselves.
like it's the opposite of it, right? A lot of guys, they also develop like porn-induced erectile dysfunction because of pornography, right?
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Oh
Okay.
yeah. Like doesn't matter what age, like we have guys that reach out to us at 18, 19-year old. They have erectile dysfunction, right? Because of
Oof.
like abusive
Wow.
of pornography use, right? And then some of them they would like literally act out, to the point of like it actually hurts, on the penis, right? So that's more of a physical manner. Once you actually get to a point of control of your sexual behavior or pornography or masturbation, you're able to actually allow your physical and your biochemical self to literally reset itself. That's what rebooting means as well. I think while you're allowing that, I think another thing is also you need your psychosis, your psychology within to reset. So you're not depending on that to feel love, to feel care, to get the dopamine rush, to get you know, and the reason a lot of guys they feel empty is because they don't actually have the oxytocin to balance it out, right? To feel love, right? To feel care, right? And so on, right? So you only feel a release at the end of the day, right? It's usually less like fulfilling, and that's why you feel the emptiness after, right? I think guys who have a misconception of like, oh yeah, when you stop like watching porn or masturbate, your sex life actually. No, I usually it's the other way around. Their sex life become better. They because then they're more interested in having sex with their partners, right? And another thing is also like the comparison with like all of the standards out there, on pornography, right? And because of those like the kind of girls, the kind of like women that you actually see in pornography, they are not the normal like girls that you usually see, and their habits is different. And only that, a lot of those are also like optimized for show, right?
Yeah.
Lighting, like
They're,
the plot.
they're the ones that are built very different than what's the norm of what we see
Yeah,
out,
that's
you know,
their
in the world.
livelihood to
Yeah.
build themselves that way, to the point of like, setting a certain kind of standard, right? And that creates that polarity. And then I think a lot of times, when some men actually watch way too much pornography, and even though they have a lovely wife, they're committed to, they just stop being attracted to them.
I'll be interested to know, question just came up, with the men that you've helped, how many, like, what might be, I guess, and like an unofficial ratio of those that tell their significant other, those that have like a wife or a girlfriend, that they go through this, and how many tell them after? Like,
Yeah,
oh, I did this because I had a problem.
I think I think it depends, the situation. I think most men who shared that, with their spouse or their significant other are the ones who got caught. They didn't tell them. I think majority,
Wow.
I would say 80% of the men who like their partner knows what's going on is that because they actually got found out and they got caught. I think a small percentage of them, they will tell them, and actually a good amount of them, they would never tell them. I actually, I'm not like, we're not in one of those organization that will force you to tell your significant other, because first of all, you have to also see if this is something that is going to add or take away from your relationship with your spouse, right? If this adds more friction in the relationship, why would you do that? It's not about lying or not. It's not about being truthful, right? It's about you have to prepare yourself and to present it in a way that is not going to hurt your livelihood. I think that's really
Understood.
important, right? And we never force any of our clients to actually expose it to their wives, right? We coach them how to have that conversation if they want to do so. Because there are
That's a
some
fair point.
relationships that their wife should never know. Nothing against their wife. It's more like how the wife would react, and they would literally over exaggerate it to the point that it would just destroy the whole entire family.
Yeah, because I'm sure there's probably men that like, no, I have to tell them I'm doing this. It's like, well, okay, and you have a great point. It's like, all right, dude, you're gonna do it, but do it in the right way.
Yeah, and then
It's not
and
a
it's
knee-jerk
easier
reaction.
to do it when you already have results.
True, very true.
It goes back to action, right? And even those guys who actually got found out and then they have to, it's good to involve your wife. And we actually have couple sessions too. The wife are welcome,
Nice.
to our sessions so that they can witness their husbands going through the process, being accountable to other men who have results. I think that's also very important to rebuild the trust. Because when wife, like, why does husbands get in a doghouse? It's because they got caught, the wife is betrayed, and the wife is literally questioning every single thing that happened before. So everything is a lie. Oh yeah, But most of the time they're over exaggerating in their mind, right? It's nothing wrong with that. It's more or less just the human nature of things. That's just how you will react, you
Yeah.
know?
That
But
self-blame, it's my fault. You're doing, well, no, it's not your fault that I'm doing this. Whatever the situation may be, it's like don't internalize it.
yeah, but they will eventually, like one way or the other. Not all wives, some wives are more chill than that. If they have a better, some women, they have a better like self-image, they understand what's going on, and they also allow themselves to educate themselves. But at the end of the day, it's so hard for any woman to really understand, how hard it is to quit porn as a man when you're really addicted, right? Because we have like what 17 times testosterone more than average woman. That's our regular Tuesday. Literally, like any woman actually would have asked me that, or any wives, like, hey, just imagine you like the horniest time times 17. That's our regular Tuesday. Just imagine that, right? And that's why a lot of like females, bodybuilders who are on anabolic steroids, they are horny as shit. Whoa, I want to have sex all the time.
I think my wife's secretly a bodybuilder.
But anyway, we do have to wrap up, right? So I hope
Okay, I
that,
got a, I
that
got a
that answers your
few.
question.
No, it does. It does. Let me see. For men listening right now who's stuck in the binge, regret, promise cycle, what is the very first honest step you want them to take in the next 20?
First of all, just reach out. I know it's like the hardest thing to do. Actually, just reach out to either myself or one of our team members to have an honest conversation, at least to have someone to listen to your story first. I think the first thing is for you to feel heard. So you're not alone in this journey. Or even listen to this podcast again. Go to listen to some of our YouTube videos. We have over 2,000 pieces of free content out that you can listen to at your own leisure, at your own time. It doesn't matter what time it is. It could be like in the middle of the night, you just literally like watch porn, like binge, or you may have watched porn the whole entire night and you about to miss your work shift because you didn't sleep. It's
I'm
okay.
sure you heard a lot of stories, yeah,
Oh
like
yeah,
that.
absolutely. We even have heard, some guys, literally got caught, red-handed, right? Some of them, they got HIV because of that, because of the problem, right? Not because of porn specifically, but because they got like into a serious, like they start acting out in real life, right? Don't wait until like literally the rock bottom to reach out, right? Reach out now. Like it's not a coincidence that you're listening to this podcast episode until this minute even, right? There's probably a sign for you to reach out for help, right? Have an honest conversation, right? Or if you're not ready yet, just listen to our podcast. Listen to our Porn Reboot podcast. We have over 700 episodes now, almost 700, if not cross 700 already. But on our YouTube, we have a lot of free content that you can literally listen to. So at least you know, oh, okay, you know what? I'm not alone. And we even have a playlist. I can share with you too if you want, but it's literally a playlist of success stories over like literally like almost 100 men. Like they get on camera and share their story, right? Not all of them. Some of them, because of privacy, we actually bloated them out, right? Or they just share audio, right? And then things like that. We have a lot of those too, right? But it's a safe space, man. For you to reach out.
That is awesome. Yeah, send me everything that you got because I would love to showcase that.
Sure.
And lastly, for listeners who resonate with your approach and want to go deeper, where's the best place for them to connect in addition to what you've already shared with you or learn more about the reboot work you are a part of?
Send us a message, man. Right? If you want to like just send us an email, my email address is gt@elevatorrecovery.org. If you can just put like the title, like podcast, I heard like your podcast, FYI, I'm damaged. So at least I know where you're from, right? And then at least I know what the context is. And just share, who you are, what your age, what your context is. Just a little bit of a quick blurb of like what the struggle is. And we'll set up a call, either on Zoom or over the phone, and we'll go from there. Right? That will be the easiest way.
That's awesome. Thank you for providing this service with you and your team. And thank you again for giving me your time on this nice Saturday morning. I don't know where you're at, but I'm in New York and
I'm
it's.
in New Mexico, so.
Oh, you're in New Mexico? Nice.
Yeah.
So thank you again. And I love the mission that you're doing.
Thank you.
And I honestly think like I want to prioritize men's health along with all the other topics that I touch on.
Yeah.
And I want to prioritize this podcast because it means something to me.
Yeah.
It means something to me when people, instead of doing that general, well, we'll help everybody, but men need help too. I know
Yeah.
that because I've been there.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
I really want this to resonate with individuals. And thank you again for giving me your time, the space, and, again, thank you for everything that you do.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. And thank you for everything that you do as well. Hosting this, holding this space for me. All right. Appreciate you, man.
All right. Appreciate you.
All right.
All right. Thank you.
Okay.
If you're here at the end of our conversation, pace your next steps. Because what Stephanie shared wasn't just design talk. It was a reminder that healing doesn't always begin in your mind. Sometimes it begins in the personal spaces around you. Her story from the starving artist years to discovering holistic healing, to realizing that safety and nervous system peace are the foundation of human growth, shows us something powerful. Your environment is either supporting your life or it's silently sabotaging it. When she spoke about neurodivergent families, about parents who had given up their boundaries, about children who need agency and adults who need to feel like themselves again, she wasn't just talking about design. She was talking about dignity, about identity, about the subtle ways we lose ourselves inside spaces that overwhelm us, and the quiet miracles that happen when we reclaim said spaces. And if anything you heard today made you look around your own home differently, good, because you deserve a space that reflects your story, your culture, your nervous system, and your peace. You deserve a sanctuary. Not someday, not when your life gets easier, but starting with one small daily shift starting today. So take Stephanie's advice. Find the one object, color, texture, or memory in your space that makes you feel good and give it room to breathe. Let that be the first step in rebuilding your environment and maybe even rebuilding yourself. Until next time, keep choosing spaces that love you back. This is FYI, I am damaged. If you made it to the end of this conversation, take a second to reflect, because GT didn't talk about porn. He talked about men, real men, Men who are strong in every area of life except the one place they've been afraid to look, themselves. He reminded us that porn addiction doesn't start with porn. It starts with loneliness, with fear, with boredom, with cultures that tell men to stay silent, with pressure to perform, with relationships where no one's talking about what they actually need. But GT also reminded us of something better, that there is a way out, not through shame, not through yelling, be more disciplined, but through honesty, self-awareness, community, and learning how to build a life you don't need to escape from. What I love most about his message is this: rebooting isn't about going backwards, it's about becoming someone you've never been. A man who's grounded, connected, intentional, and proud of the life he's finally building for himself. You're living your life. You come first. No pun intended. So if anything in this episode hits you, curiosity, discomfort, recognition, let it be the beginning. Ask the hard questions. Men, seek support. Define who you want to be. You don't have to walk this alone. Please visit GT and the whole team at their website, elevatedrecovery.org, for more. Adelante, siempre por tu mente. Forward, always for your mind. This is the FYI I Am Damaged podcast. Meet Logan, the strong-minded little elephant who learns that bravery isn't about being fearless. It's about believing in yourself even when you're scared. In this beautifully illustrated story, friends follow Logan through a colorful jungle as he learns to calm his worries, take deep breaths, and remind himself, I am strong, I am safe, I can do this. It's a story that helps kids, and maybe a few grown-ups too, find courage, mindfulness, and strengthen their hearts. Logan, the strong-minded little elephant, by me, Oscar Luna. Available now at all major retailers and my publisher's bookstore, Milton and Hugo. Because it's up to every parent to show that their child deserves to know that strength starts from within.